Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors. Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I'm Ellie Cassetta, and welcome to Chapter 5 of the Festival of Storytellers, an international virtual book event that's streamed across Canada, the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom. We are live across all of the platforms and our social media. So don't forget to follow us and don't forget to subscribe. I am the moderator for this roundtable, which is a delicious dive into the cookbook. I have a cookbook, and I am the author of One Caregiver's Journey, and I am also the author of Generations of Good Food. I wrote my first book when it is a journal of 10 years of caregiving for my mother, who broke her hip at the age of 93 and then passed away in my home at the age of 102. So about 6 months after she passed, I then was cleaning out a pantry to paint it and come across all of her cookbooks. I created a binder of 200 recipes that I had printed, and I gave to my nieces, my great nieces, and some of my mother's favorite nieces. And a short while after that, Reader's Magnet asked if I had a cookbook, and I went back. If I had a book I was going to publish, and we talked about the cookbook, and I went back and added stories of the things that bring us families to the table. And that's how I ended up spending 6 months during the pandemic writing my cookbook while everybody else was complaining about the cleaning lady not coming and not being able to go to the store. Let's go. Let's bring on the room, and let's see who we have with us today. There we go. Good morning. We have, there you go. Jamie needs to come in. We have Chef Jennifer. We have Amy. We have Kimmy, Margie, Chet, Carla, John, and Cecily is with us today. So I am interested. Let's go around the room and very quickly talk about your books and what you're interested in talking about. Writing a cookbook, reading a cookbook, recipes. So let's Jamie, let's start with you. You want to unmute? Jamie? Well, did I lose Jamie? She didn't unmute. Okay, Kimmy, let's start with you. You want to unmute?
Good
Fred,
morning, everyone.
there you go, Kimmy. Tell us about you. I know, Kimmy. Tell us about your books, and then tell us about why you're interested in the deep dive into a cookbook.
Well, I'm Kimmy Littlejohn Clark, and I am an author of 2 books. My first book is 40.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, Fred, we can't hear you, Kim. Kimmy, we can't hear you. We're having some technical issues, obviously. Okay.
Bad connection.
We're having
for
some, we
everybody
can't
here.
hear you, Kimmy. So we're having some technical difficulties. Amy, can you unmute and see if we
We're
can
all
hear
having
you?
technical difficulties. It's okay.
Okay, Amy,
Go to the
Amy
next
unmute.
one.
Jamie is unmuted. Jamie, can you talk? Because we couldn't hear Kimmy. We can't hear you.
I can hear
Jamie,
you.
we can't see you. Oh, this is going to be a fun.
Can you hear me? I'm Amy.
I can hear you. Okay,
Okay.
Kimmy, we can't hear you. We're having some connection issues. All right,
Yeah.
let's hear Amy. Let's see if we can hear you.
Hi, my name's Amy Ostrower. My love of cooking started in my grandmother's kitchen. And as many of you know, the generational love between a grandmother and a granddaughter is pretty special. My grandmother was born in 1912 and lived till 2000. So she lived through some of the major changes in our history. She talked to me about the 1918 flu epidemic and how she lost a sister and an aunt to that. She talked about her, growing up during World War I and World War II, and all those things that, we take for granted now, but they were part of their history then. And anyway, it became a story. Like every time we make a recipe, whatever it was, rolled cabbage, rugelach, pecan pies, there was a story to go with it. And it was a story of, my grandmother's generation of people. And so I started off that way. The first time I published this book, I had it where there was a recipe at the end of each chapter. But then people said to me, tell the story and we'll put the recipes at the end. And that's what I'm doing in this new version that we're putting out now. And it's exciting for me.
That's what my book has done.
Yeah,
That's what my book has done. My book ties each of the recipes back to my caregiving book, to my mother. My book is 6 generations.
Great.
So I understand the generational stuff.
Yeah, there were 40.
Kimmy, are you?
Yep.
Okay.
There were 4
We're kind of, let's,
I experienced, and so I was able to, keep that storyline. And now there are 4 other generations, so it's pretty cool.
good for you. Kimmy, you want to see if we can hear you now?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Can we hear you? Okay, we can hear you. Tell us about your book, and tell us about what brings you into the delicious dive of a cookbook.
Well, I'm the author of 2 books. My first book is 43 Days Born to Live. And it's about my story of child loss and my relationship with the Lord then and after. And my second book is called Nobody Goes to Heaven Kicking and Screaming. That came out last year, published by Reader's Magnet. And so these books are on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and Reader's Magnet. And I am on here because I want to hear some, I need some ideas about cooking.
Oh, good. Let's, Chef Jennifer, you want to unmute and tell us about you?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer. I'm the author of 2 traditional cookbooks
So that's why I
and
keep getting
2
kicked out.
illustrated children's books.
Not
What's
they
wrong?
have-
Oh,
they're
where
in
is
there
it?
with her.
Can you hear me
Somebody
okay?
needs to mute if they're talking to somebody else.
And then
We can hear you, but
and
we
then
can hear
everybody's
somebody
all
else.
marbley and staticky and you. So I think we're just having a bad connection today
Yeah.
with the weather.
So I was saying I have 2 traditional cookbooks and 2 illustrated children's books that have recipes for the family to make together. I'm a professional chef, and my first cookbook, Fil Piece to Foie Gras, Southern Recipes with a French Accent, is a recipe of Southern recipes that I grew up with, and then my classical French training in Paris, France, kind of giving it that aesthetic and that spin on it. And when I was invited to come and check out the Roundtable, I was excited to see what other cookbooks are out there and what people are doing right now.
Super. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
We keep moving around here. I keep trying to figure out who I'm going to. Margie, tell me about you.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Margie Green Moss, and I'm an author and a speaker. I've written 2 books. I speak on domestic and relationship violence to young people and to people actually in domestic violence. And I am here today not because I'm a cook or that I like to cook, but I like to eat. And when I do cook, I want to cook something quick and tasty. So that's what I'm listening for, a quick and easy menu.
I have to tell you that when I was caregiving for my mother for 10 years, I put 3 meals on the table for her every day for 10 years. But I learned how to make just a heck of a good meal in about 35, 40 minutes, because when you caregive for somebody, you really don't have all day to wait for something to braise and to bake and to cook. You just gotta be able to put something. And because my mother was such a wonderful cook and baker, the bar was pretty high. Chet, are you unmute and tell us about Chet?
I don't really even know what I see my box down here, but I don't see me in the screen.
Jamie, mute. There you go. Okay, Chet, are you with us? Chet, hello? Okay, Carla, let's go to Carla. Carla, you want unmute and talk to us. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Unmute. There you go. Okay. Yes.
So I'm Carla J. Wallace. I'm from southern BC and British Columbia, Canada. And I'm actually a really new author. I was inspired for some reason to start writing when I lost my little fur baby. And she was my whole life for 5 years straight. She was glued to my hip. And when she passed from a really bad sudden accident, I went into this shell. And when I kind of woke up from it, I just started writing. And I produced 9 novels or 9 books, just like that. I don't kind of know where they came from, but they were about self-healing, about chakra balancing, about grief and loss, dealing with all different things that I've done in my life. And what inspired me, which I think I'm just your standard cook, your housewife, mother cook. I'm not nothing
You're a
super
home chef.
fancy. The one that likes to do the fancy stuff. But we would always like to do our little date nights, and he would always cook me steak and lobster, and I just loved it. But it was like that for almost 30 years. So I was like, something's got to give. We got to do something different. And he said, well, he goes, I don't have a whole lot of time. I work full time. So I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'll just kind of go through and find all those recipes that I've never tried before and things that I would just love to try. And so I started looking around, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to come up with something. And my book's called Sensual Delights, a Culinary Adventure for Romantic Evenings. So not just about doing cooking, but also to set the mood, the atmosphere. What music do you listen to? If it's a first date and somebody buys this book, what do you talk about? What are some ideas to think about and to get the night kicked off? So that's sort of what inspired me to write this. And it came from just recipes that I was looking at online that I always wanted to try, but a lot of the ingredients I didn't always have, or in my local store, because I live in a really small town, they didn't have those ingredients. So I had to modify some of the things, and it just kind of really worked out. We made each one of them and they were delicious. So that's sort of what inspired me. And I'm actually really interested now in learning more about cooking, like actually getting more fancier.
Well, it looks like we have enough people here that we could do that. John, tell us about John. Unmute.
I did. How is everybody
John?
today? Okay, good.
We're fine,
This is my first book, and it's interesting how this book came to be. It was really a collection of all my family recipes, primarily my grandmother, who I used to cook with when I was a kid. And when she passed, all the people in my family thought that I had all Nana's recipes. And in fact, Nana wrote down nothing. She never had a recipe. So I went back and she taught me how to make them. And I went back and I did a pinch of this and a handful of this. And I made all her recipes again, but I weighed all the spices beforehand and all the spices afterwards. And then I changed them into teaspoons and tablespoons and cups and whatever. And it really is a collection of family recipes, primarily Italian. And it was a lot of fun to do.
I have to share with you basically kind of when I pulled out all the recipes, there were a lot of them that was one big spoon of or one green bowl of flour. You don't know which spoon. Well, I knew which spoon because I'd made those recipes with her before. But the green bowl, I had to do the same thing, was take the green bowl and figure out what the measurements were in the green bowl, figure out what the measurements were. And in the ricotta cheese recipe, it's a handful. It's really funny. It's a handful of salt. And so, I'm pretty little. My hands are pretty small. And
yeah, okay.
When I was making it with one of my mother's cousins, he got the handful of salt, and then we figured out it was a heaping tablespoon. So those are things I think that all of us who have written family cookbooks have had to deal with. Cicely, tell us about Cicely.
Yeah, my name is Cecily, Cecily Thomas. I like to cook because I like to eat. I came from a family.
What do you like to cook?
Bake, stew, dessert, all different things. We have like corn pork, we have stew mutton, stew chicken, curry, all that stuff. And I just love to make it. My mom was a cook and she make her own recipe. And as I heard those guys talking about their hands, my mother never used to measure things, she used her hand. So a lot of my measurement is in my hand. It seemed like it speaks to me every time I have enough for what I'm doing, like this is enough. And then I went to work at a safe haven rehab center, and I was cooking there for the folks. So after doing different cooking and trying to make simple recipe that was inexpensive, I started to measure each time I do a pot or stew. I measure it and I start to take all the measurement and make up recipe. So I wrote about 20 different recipes, bread pudding, banana bread, and different things. And I was focusing on a recipe that is simple for a lady with many children and not much finance to make simple meals. So I get about I have about 20 recipes that I have. And after Joe told me about this program, I said, let me go and see and share with others and hear what others have to say. So it was
good for you.
I like to cook.
Good.
I'm an eater.
20. You know what? 20 recipes is a start.
Mm-hmm.
And someday maybe you'll have enough to write a book.
No,
So let's talk about some. Let's see what we want to dive into. Do we want to dive into how do we write a cookbook? Do we want to dive into techniques? Do we want to dive into how important is it that we focus on health and nutrition? Do we want to focus on different cultures? John and I are both Italian. My book doesn't have mangia mangia in it, but my book has plenty to mangia mangia in it. Seasonal and regional cuisines. Jennifer has said that she is French trained. Lots of techniques. Seasonal recipes. Do we want to talk about what what are festive recipes, and or tips and tricks about how to do stuff in the kitchen? And that kind of might go back to Margie and I, that, you know, quick is the same sometimes as spaghetti sauce. They used to say had to be cooked for hours and hours and hours and hours before it would taste good. And my grandma used to always say, cook it for about 45 minutes till you know the tomatoes are done. And so, but that was not with pork. It was not with, you know, with when you got meat in it, you got to think differently. So can I have some ideas? Who'd like to take up on something in particular? Unmute and talk to me. Amy, talk to me about how
Okay.
Unmute. Okay, John and Amy. Okay, John and Amy. Amy, tell me.
Well, I just was laughing when you were talking about the handful of this and the handful of that, because my grandmother was Jewish and Southern. And so it was an eggshell of this and a yahrzeit glass of that. A yahrzeit glass is the glass for memorials, and it's about a cup, but you know, her measurements were in, you know, a bissel of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I did, like John did, I had to translate what a bissel meant into, and I also did provide a dictionary at the end of my book for people who don't speak Yiddish. But you know, it was a labor of love that I had no idea people would embrace. You know, I published this once 15 years ago, and people kept calling me because it went out of print and the publishing company went out of print. So now I'm going to launch this again, and it feels good. It feels good to do it now.
Good. John.
Well, part of my book explains how to handle the meat and how to pound veal and chicken and what it means to do that. And once you do that, how to dredge the chicken and how to make that dredging flour and salt and pepper and all that other stuff. So part of my book goes into those preparation type things. And if you can do some of your prep first, you know, beforehand, you can really make my dishes in 15 or 20 minutes and you're done. If the prep work is done beforehand, you know, you can fry up a chicken cutlet or a veal cutlet and make a veal parm or whatever. You can make it very quickly if your prep is done. And as a chef in a restaurant, I used to do that all the time. I had the prep done, and I would take me 10 or 15 minutes to get out a table of dinners because everything was ready. And that's how my book is written.
Well, if you have a restaurant, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, that's
Kimmy,
right.
how do you cook for your family? What would you, if you were going to write a cookbook, what would you want to do? The techniques, the different kinds of recipes? Would you focus on health and nutrition, your cultural background? What would you do? Unmute, Kimmy. There you go.
If I wrote one, I would definitely want to focus on seasonal recipes, and health would definitely be involved, because more than ever, I probably need to be focusing on that.
You've worked in hospitals, so you know nutrition.
Yes.
So how important is it then, Kimmy, to make sure that recipes are nutritional, does that take away from the taste?
Well, my nieces and nephews think that it does. And because I've tried, you know, I've tweaked things over the years, and they're like, oh no, go back to the old way. And so And they don't care because they're younger, so they don't look at it as, oh, let's be healthy. They just look at it as, this is how you've always done it, so let's keep doing it that way. And I'm like, yeah, but that might give you clogged arteries. So, yeah.
So Carla, if your book does a lot on how to set tables and how to set the mood, then do you go into the food?
Actually, I
You
come
talk
up with
about
the
recipes
first, and then I set. So this is what you need to prepare for your food. Everything, have that already and prepped, and it's cooking. And then you set your music, your atmosphere, whether it's candlelight, whether it's a first date. So they're just options for people to consider. So anyone that picks up the book could kind of go, oh my God, I want to do this, and I want that music tonight, and I want that atmosphere, I want that scent in the room. I want to put together these types of little games or little things for us to talk about, to get to know each other. And then the whole book, I also list out all the calories and any sugars that are in them, because I am very health conscious. If I was to write another one, I would still stay down this path, because I don't see anything like this out here. Like
How do you figure calories in your recipes?
Measure everything out. I spent 25 years in the fitness industry, so I've got a ton of material that when you portion everything out, and that's sort of how I live. I live on portioned meals, and I've always been that way. So I know exactly how many pounds of steak and how many calories are in it. So, and how many servings for everything. So like I just kind of, figured that out as I was writing each one. But I would still continue down the same.
Okay, Cecily, tell us about you. How do you like to do that?
Well, like John just said, prepping is a great help to get you where you want real fast. And I real fast. I can give an example that yesterday I wanted to do some saltfish. So I prepped the stuff for the saltfish, the onion, sweet pepper, and I put it in the oil to tare. I put the saltfish to boil. As soon as the saltfish was ready, the prep was ready. So I just mixed the two together, and it was real fast. So prepping is a very important factor in cooking. So I like to do a lot of prepping beforehand so I can get things done real fast.
Margie. Oh, Margie, talk to us. Unmute, Margie. There you go.
Yes, I understand that what Cecily was saying, and the gentleman, prep is that's what I do a lot. So I cook most of the meals. And so if I am making something and I'm only going to use an onion, I will go ahead and prep 2 onions so that the next time onions will already be prepared. So that does make it shorter for me. But I definitely cannot spend hours in the kitchen for a meal. It's just aggravating to me. I'm just not a cook. I'm an eater.
That's funny.
Now, I live alone, so when I cook, I usually make sure that I have enough for 1 or 2 more meals. Sometimes I'll thrift over, but if you all have families, then do you plan on making more? Somebody hop in.
My grandmother always taught me that you should make 1 for the table and 1 for the freezer. She says you're already doing it, you're doing all the work, so you make two and put 1 in the freezer.
Well, I just recently had hip replacement surgery, like about 3.5 weeks ago. So my freezer has been pretty full of meals that I made before then. That's sure been nice. Sure been nice. Carla, Um,
Mhm.
do you do any cultural cuisine, or do you do just basically, do you do American cuisine? Do you do cultural cuisine? What do you do?
Uh, I would probably say a mixture of everything. I don't really cook with what my culture is because I'm Romanian, Slovakian, Swedish, and Native American. So I'm a combination of those.
Holy moly.
And yeah, my dad was Swedish, but his ancestry comes from Romania and Slovakia. So I don't know a lot about their food. I know some about some of his recipes. But the Native American side, where I'm originally from, which is Canada's Northwest Territories, way up there in the high Arctic, you're looking at moose, buffalo, caribou, and preparing them the proper way is completely different than your standard way of cooking. It's completely different.
Absolutely.
And what
Absolutely.
goes with certain
And
things.
wild meats take so much more.
Very different. Yeah, so I think one of
Yes.
the books that I would write in the future for cooking would be about wild meat and how to prepare it properly, because I was trained that way by my grandmother. And I really love my wild meat and preparing it properly so you don't get any of that gamey taste into it. But yeah, no, I don't really target anything. I think it's just, what do I think would go well with setting the mood and the atmosphere, and what do you think would taste well, and what wines would go with it too, because I now live in wine country of Canada, which is super cool. So I'm able to go to a lot of different wineries and learn about the wines, because I was never really a wine drinker myself, and I've just gotten into it in the last couple of years.
Well, I don't know if any of the rest of you are in areas where there's a lot of seasonal hunting, but I'm in Colorado, and we have very much a very active hunting season in the fall. And wild meats, as Jamie said, wild meats do require a certain and if you don't know how to dress your animal and how to prepare your wild meat, they can taste awful. But if you know how to prepare venison or buffalo or elk or moose or whatever the right way, even wild boar, and it takes a very skilled kind of hunter to figure out how to make your family want to eat those meats. Otherwise, they just make jerky out of them. And that's what you eat. That's what you eat is jerky. But I have a nephew who shoots wild boar, and it takes him weeks sometimes to make it right. But you would never know it's any different than any other domestic meat, to put it that way, a cow or a pork. Yep. John, tell us. Do you go into a lot of techniques in your book, or does your book not go into a lot of techniques?
Well, it just goes into the basic techniques of how to pound meat and get it right, and how to dredge and how to make up the dredges, but and how to make like spaghetti sauce that takes 45 minutes and not 4 hours. So there are some techniques like that. It's not hardcore culinary techniques, but it's really good cooking skills that my grandmother taught me. And she came over from Italy. And
what part of it?
My grandmother's from Sicily, so it's a lot of heavier type. Sicily. There's a lot of heavier gravies and sauces and a lot of seafood.
That's where my people are from Sicily. Chet, I wish we could get you up, but I don't seem to be able to get Chet up. So let's talk about varieties of recipes. My particular cookbook has, because my father was such a voracious sweet tooth. My mother did a lot of baking. So my book has a lot of cookies and cakes and pies and candy, as well as meals that you would put on the table. Kimmy, if you wrote a cookbook, what would you have? Unmute, babe. There you go.
I would probably want to do pastas. I love creamy pastas. So, and I would want to really get, good at the sauces that they use, like in the restaurant. So, pastas and pies would probably be in my cookbook.
Amy, do you focus on a particular, I'll come back to you in a minute, Cicely. Amy, do you focus on a particular variety?
Well, because this cookbook was based on my grandmother's really, her stories and her recipes, I took also recipes from her sisters, my aunts. And so I have, sites like the rivalry between who makes the best Swedish meatballs. We've got those. We've got different forms of rugelach, different forms of noodle kugel. And then I became, realizing that most of these recipes were fattening and delicious, but fattening. I tried to make a few versions of like my potato latkes are made out of sweet potatoes. So, I just, you just change it up a little bit, throw in a few different spices. But her recipes were pretty much the foods of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and lots of good baked goods.
Good for you. Cicely, what did you want to add something?
Yeah. In my little book that I have like bread pudding and banana bread, and that's sweet. And I have a little bit of you can take simple thing like say maybe a corned beef and make a meal for a family that is very inexpensive. So you have your corned beef that you saute and put your sauce in, then you cook a little rice on the side, and then you have a little vegetable, and all of that was considering helping the lady that was having problem with her children to have a good little meal and not very expensive for them. We have things like tamon stew that the children likes. You have gooseberry stew, those are stuff that go in our islands, and we make use of them. So banana bread, we have something we call a boya that's made from cornmeal. I think you call it up here muffin, but we call it boya. It's cornmeal mixed with essence and a little egg and stuff, and you bake it, and it come into a cluster, which is good for the children too. So my book is more focusing on that need of ladies who have children and cannot afford to the big expensive food like the steaks and different things. Vienna sausage, you make that for a meal for your children with a macaroni and cheese and vegetable.
Nothing.
Pardon me? Were you saying something, John?
I'm sorry, someone asked a question?
No, I thought somebody was saying something while I was speaking.
No. So when I was growing up, and I'm sure John and maybe all of you, there used to be the Sunday dinners when there might be 15, 20 people around a table. Does anybody do that anymore?
I does it. After church, I have friends that come to the house, and I have a special pot that I do stew in, so that everybody is not just for my family but others. My mother always encouraged us not to do for the house alone, but somebody might pass by and need a meal. So on the Sunday is a big cooking for us.
Okay, Kimmy, do you still have? Oh, we've got. You know what? We've got a question from one of our listeners. Is there any advice on how to become a professional chef? And our professional chef is not with us. I would say get training,
Go to school.
or start out in a restaurant as a line chef or a sous chef. What would someone else say? Amy, Carla, John?
I would, if
Any of
you're
you?
looking,
Amy?
I would just start working.
Go
in a
ahead,
restaurant.
Carla. No,
Like if you
you're
can't
fine.
school,
Go ahead.
then try and work in the kitchen and start learning all the different steps and all the different positions and how to make everything.
And how to start from ground zero from
That's
you may even have to start out as washing dishes after you've gone to school.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, we lost John. Amy. Oh, unmute. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, my grandmother's recipes started off really large because she was one of 10 children. And so she would say, this is what you do to make this dish. And then so, of course, I had to pare things down. And over the years, she wrote smaller recipes. But yeah, we had family dinners for holidays where there'd be 30, 40 people. And we set up all around the pool table and whatever tables we could fit and get everybody in the room.
I
Yes,
think
John.
you can also
We
try
thought we lost you.
experimenting.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah. John, tell us, what do you think is the best way to become a chef? So we've all said go to school and then start from maybe a dishwasher or line cook and work your way up.
You know,
What would you say?
When I started cooking, I started like when I was 13 years old in a restaurant as a dishwasher and as a prep cook, and went from there to making dough and to the line. But in the meantime, I was doing my regular career, which is a chemical engineering career. The only technical education I had was when I took a 3-week trip to Italy, and I went to Italy and I worked with some Michelin chefs over there, and they taught me quite a bit of things, mostly how to make sauces real quick, things like that. It is just an amazing education you can get. But I don't have any other than those 3 weeks of Italian cooking. I didn't have any other education than my family and the people the chefs that I worked with that I picked up with. So you don't necessarily have to go to culinary school, but
I would disagree with that and
maybe
say
nowadays you have to, but I didn't.
What you learn from other people is the same as sitting in a classroom and having someone try to teach you. I don't know if all of you would agree with that, but if you're standing around a stove and
I guess you're right. I guess
learning how to cook, yes.
You can try your own recipe too by putting stuff together. You can try your own recipe.
Yeah.
Try learning things and putting stuff together on your own.
Fred, do we have
See
any
what
other
would work
questions? Okay. Chloe wants to know any advice how to present a cookbook for children. Margie, what would you say to that? Margie, you have unmute. Margie, unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
To develop a cookbook for children, well, we all know where to start with children. So cookies and candy. If you want to get interest from children on cooking, it's going to almost always be something sweet. But as I am not a cook and I don't particularly care to cook, I just like to eat. I would not be a good person to answer that question.
Well, I would say if you're going to bring children in, you bring children into the kitchen and let them help you cook. Now you have to be mindful of knives and the stove, but nothing is a better teacher than the actual experience itself, being in a kitchen or learning something anywhere. Amy, do you have anything to add? Unmute. There
I
you go.
believe that's how my grandmother learned to cook. She learned to cook from her mother and her great grandmother. And so that's why I have those stories in the book as well, because they came from the old country and then they brought their stories and their recipes with. But she said that
Yes.
they would divide up the tasks among the kids. You know, the youngest one could take the nuts and separate the shells from the nuts, and the other one could do raisins, and then each one had a task, and then they put it all together and make the food. So, kids
My
love
I
it.
learned
granddaughter,
how to
every
bake
time
pasta.
I was saying that when I'm
I
in the
learned how to-
kitchen, my grandma.
Go
Go
on,
ahead.
Cecily. Go ahead. No, go
No,
ahead,
I was saying that
Cecily.
when I'm in the kitchen, my granddaughter would come in and she wanted to help me. So if I'm making something that we call Johnny cakes, I would take a piece off and give her so she can do her own thing and teach her how to roll it and how to make it. So that get them
Well, I
interested.
learned how to bake pasta from my grandma. And my grandma would put the stool by the side of the table and put out the eggs and the flour in a well, and I'd make a mess, but eventually she would gather it all together and we'd have pasta, and she would tell everybody that I made it. So, but really I didn't. I just started the mess and she did it.
I think I might add, if you don't mind,
Yeah, my
the
grandmother
reason
taught me
that
the same way.
I'm not I'm big on cooking is when I was a child, my mother was a Southern, we're Southern. I was born in Georgia
Mm-hmm.
and grew up in Brooklyn and New York. But my mother was always a cook. And when she was a girl, she was made to learn how to cook. That
Oh,
was back
yes.
in the days
Yes,
that
absolutely.
the girls had to learn how to cook. So
Absolutely.
when I came along, I did not like cooking. I didn't want any part of the kitchen. I didn't mind washing the dishes and cleaning up, but I just never. So my mother never encouraged me strongly to cook. So I grew up I knew how to make a sandwich and things like that. But I never knew how to cook. So I wanted to qualify that a little bit. I have nothing against cooking. I love cooks. As a matter of fact, my best friends are cooks, but I'm just not a kitchen person.
I think that in the time of my parents, grandparents, or whatever, those days were very different. I mean, they had a lot of people around the table. They had to cook. They didn't have DoorDash to bring their meals to their homes, and most of the time in where I am from anyway, here in Colorado, they raised their own vegetables and their animals, and pretty much everything was done for you. We seldom ever went out to eat that I can ever remember because everything was always fresh at home. So we got somebody. Is that we got somebody's got a child. So would somebody like to add? Are there different cooking techniques that is there any particular cooking technique, Carla? Is there any particular cooking technique that you favor?
For children?
Well, for anybody. No,
Oh, for
no, not
anybody.
for kids.
Personally, stay out of my kitchen when I'm cooking. I don't like anybody in my kitchen when I'm cooking. It's like I need my
Really?
space. Yeah, I don't want help. If I need help, I'll ask for it, but I have things laid out and set out, and when my husband comes into the kitchen when I'm cooking, he just makes a mess. And it's like I like to clean up after myself as I'm cooking, so I know exactly where everything is, and then he starts moving things around. And I don't even go into the kitchen when he's cooking because it's like a bomb went off when he cooks. And so we're very, very different. But yeah, I just like to be alone in the kitchen. Let me do my thing. I can do like 2, 3 different things all at once. I multitask when I'm in the kitchen. So that's just for me. It's just like, just don't come near me when I'm in the kitchen.
I'm almost neurotic that my kitchen has to be clean when I'm cooking. I don't, although sometimes I'll look around and think, oh my God, I got to do something about this before I move forward. And I suspect that happens in all of our kitchens. But I really do suspect that happens in all of our kitchens. John, talk to me about, do you focus on nutrition and health, or do you just focus on good recipes?
No, I don't. Unlike, I think it was Cecily that talked about how she knew the calories and everything else of her ingredients. I guess I don't do that. I use fresh ingredients whenever possible. I live in Florida, so we get a lot of fresh vegetables all the time. So when I'm making beans and greens or something, I'll go and I'll get fresh Swiss chard and use that, and that's what I like to do. But as far as goes, content of my recipes, I don't have that. I don't. But
Okay.
I am when I'm really try to make sure that all the ingredients I use are fresh and grown in Florida. When I had my restaurant, everything was grown in Florida and was delivered to my restaurant from local farmers. That's how I did all my produce.
Where
So
in
the
Florida are
eggplants
you?
and the cucumbers and the tomatoes and all of that came to the store fresh.
Where in Florida are you? John, where are you in
Yes.
Florida? What part of Florida are you in?
In Fort Myers.
Okay. So,
In Fort Myers.
okay. How can cookbook authors effectively connect with and understand the needs of their target
we're starting
audience? So, how can we connect? Do you have? There you go. Do you have a target audience? Who wants to answer? Do you have a Amy? Do you have a target audience? Did you write your cookbooks with the target audience in mind?
Well, it began with the target audience of Southern Jewish people, but I found that the stories were universal, and other people reached out to me and said, "Oh, in Sweden we did this, and in Czechoslovakia we have these traditions." So is basically encourages people to get your family stories, record them, tell those stories, because those people will not be with us forever, but their stories can be.
I could not agree more. Carla, did you write your book for a target audience?
Yeah. Date nights, romantic date nights. That's where my culinary one came from. So it's very specifically targeting people that are dating or don't know what to make if they're going to cook for somebody on a first date type thing. Or romantic evenings with your spouse, since you don't know what else to cook. So that was the whole inspiration behind that.
That's pretty cool. John. Unmute, John. Do you have a target audience for your book?
There you go. Yes. I guess I did. Most of my recipes are usually for one or two people, and they're simple enough and don't require significant culinary schools that someone who's ever learning to cook, or newlyweds who have never really cooked for anybody else, they can go to the book, and within 10 or 15 or 30 minutes, they could make an authentic Italian meal and be very happy with it. So I guess that would be my target audience.
No, I'm pretty glad for that. Kimmy, if you were going to write a book, who would your target be? Unmute.
I probably would be thinking more like Carla, like dating and romantic kind of stuff.
It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Honestly, with that type of a mindset, you start getting going into really creating that atmosphere and going, oh my God, what would I want that night to look like? And what would I want to eat? What would I want to drink for wine? What kind of dessert would we have? Oh my God, like your mind just starts wandering and going crazy, right? So, and it just takes you on an adventure. Like the recipes that I wrote for this, each one of them were like, oh my God, what a dreamy night that would have been, right? So it was lots of fun writing it.
Well, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. We all know
Absolutely.
that. Cecily, if you had to cook, if you had to create a book for a target, what would it be? Unmute. There you go.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, my focus is on helping ladies who have lots of children and giving them encouragement of what they can do in their situation. Very inexpensive or foreign meals. I'm attacking those type of people. Mothers need to feed their children, affordable.
So you would cook for families.
Yes, a family.
Oh, wow. Well, my book kind of is for everybody, and I guess you could take. I have recipes that are, I believe, as Amy said, I have a sweet bread recipe that actually is 8 pounds of flour and a dozen eggs, and I mean it makes 8 loaves. So. But then I have cookie recipes, and most everything that it's in my book can be halved and quartered, and but in those days they cooked for big groups of people. My caponata actually makes 52 pints, so there was a time when we made that every year. But now I don't know who I would. I don't know if I know enough people that I could give 52 pints away to. So I mean that's kind of where we are. We're 3 minutes left in our session. So what else would we like to talk about? Are you going to write another cookbook, Carla?
Yeah, no, I will for sure. I will focus on sort of what's happening with people's health in the industry, like same type of date night stuff, but maybe one that has gluten-free recipes in it, and helping people that suffer from celiac disease or have to really watch their calorie intakes, but still having a good meal and still being able to provide some type of a good dessert that isn't going to, it's not going to affect diabetics. So I'd really like to focus on always having that health aspect in place. But this book originally was just about romantic evenings. So the next one, I definitely want to focus on a little bit more healthier things for romantic evenings. And then someone that might be vegetarian. What do you do if you've got a spouse that's a vegetarian, or you're dating somebody that is a vegetarian? How do you cook for that if you've never really cooked for them, right? So
I have a nephew who is severe celiac, and learning how to cook with my niece when he was first diagnosed was really interesting. And most of my baking recipes can be substituted with a gluten-free flour mix, and we have tested most all of them, and it works if you have the right mixture for a gluten-free. I wouldn't say Bob's Red Mill is worth buying, but you can make a great gluten-free flour, and that goes and works.
I would really want to focus on something like that. Plus, there's like my husband and I are into weight training and bodybuilding, and I've got a lot of friends that are like really big bodybuilders, and their meals, the way they eat, is ew. Like all they're doing is taking this big, huge piece of chicken and they're just scrimpling it all down because they need the protein.
They're eating salads with protein every night.
They're like unbelievable how they don't have like a fun romantic recipes, and they just eat. They're huge protein shakes, and they're all about building their muscle. But I don't think that they really know how to actually make a meal that would still benefit them for muscle growth. Right. So I'd like to focus on doing one like that as well.
Right. I agree with you, and I could probably have quite the conversation with you on all of that. We are out of time. I would like to thank Reader's Magnet for allowing us to have this have this roundtable. I've enjoyed discussing all of this with all of you. I think it's been a lot of fun. I've certainly learned a lot from all of you. And as we say in Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.